So integrating propane across these ports can reduce their carbon footprint, keep the cost manageable, and continue to move our goods at a scale that our economy demands. So their decision to switch to propane and continue using it's not by subsidies, it's not by grants. They found an ROI that's just driven by performance, reliability, fuel savings.
Welcome to Maritime Matters, a podcast focused on leaders in the maritime market, the people, the companies, the technologies that are making and breaking the news, helping to lead the maritime industry to a safer, more efficient, more profitable, and cleaner future. Welcome aboard. This is Greg Troutline with Maritime Matters, the MarineLink Podcast, and we are happy again to welcome Jim Bunsey, Propane Education and Research Council, or PERC, to Maritime Matters to discuss not only the grand topic of energy transition in maritime and ports, but rather we're going to dig into some specific cases where propane has and is playing a role in the energy transition. So, Jim, this is particularly well timed because as I actually recently found out, October 7th is National Propane Day. So with that, welcome back to Maritime Matters.
Thanks, Greg. It's always great to be here. So, October 7th, it is National Propane Day, so I'm really glad you brought that up. So it's important to us here at PERC because it shines light on propane's role across all market segments. We're the energy for everybody. So from homes to farms to construction, transportation, power generation, it's the energy that's available for all of us. But my main focus here at the Propane Education Research Council is about sectors like ports and maritime operations and large distribution centers. And I want to make sure they see propane as a clean, reliable, affordable energy option. So these are industries, they're under real pressure to cut emissions without sacrificing performance. And propane is already delivering those solutions today. We have equipment that can be ordered and brought in to meet all of our needs that are there. So National Propane Day is a chance to remind everyone that propane isn't just a fuel. It's a pathway to lower emissions, affordable clean energy, and operational resilience in places that keep our economy running.
Okay, well, Jim, we've done these interviews enough now that you perfectly lead me on to the next topic. You mentioned the ports. And earlier this week, we both were in Breakbulk Americas in Houston. And on the Mafi stand, there was a really good looking piece of kit that was propane fueled. So, I can't wake up in the morning literally without energy transition popping up within minutes. And as you know, there are a multitude of potential solutions creeping into the mix. So to start, when you look holistically at the opportunities for propane in the port and maritime sector, what do you see?
So Greg, this is one of my favorite questions. But so when we look at ports and maritime sector, we have to look holistically, like as you said, approach, because the challenges aren't just about reducing emissions. They're about keeping operations affordable, reliable, and especially with tariffs and rising operational costs, propane allows us to step in and offset the diesel, and we have a wide range of equipment available to us. We have, forklifts, medium-duty trucks, drayage equipment. But the biggest impact, what we're here to talk about today, is the terminal tractors. So these units run long, hard hours. They're big energy consumers. When you look at their energy usage, they use about 20,000 gallons of propane a year. And when we kind of look at that, I'm going to compare it to a school bus that delivers our children to school every day. They use 3,500 gallons a year. So we're looking at a big energy impact that these things, so they're energy users. And I don't want to call them polluters, but they are polluters. We have a lot of emissions that we put off. So, they're critical to the ports. That's what keeps the ports moving. As our ships come in, we have to unload. We know that, they only have a certain amount of time to get it done. So it's critical that they operate and offer, a good resilience, reliable solution. So, the propane offers their emission reduction goals right now without sacrificing their reliability or breaking their budget. So integrating propane across these ports can reduce their carbon footprint, keep the cost manageable, and continue to move our goods at a scale that our economy demands.
People, they want the fuel. They want to have the fuel that's reliable. It's going to be there. It works, and it doesn't break the bank. So I think you check off a lot of those boxes. So, as I've said many, many times, I've been doing this for 30 plus years. It's been long enough that I can now confidently say, and often it's to the bewilderment and wonderment of younger people that, I've been here since 1992. before there was internet, before there was email. Besides reinforcing the reason that my hair is this color, my point is this. Our audience loves a case study, real world insights on how organization XYZ has incorporated technology one, two, three, and gotten these results. So I understand from past conversations that you have a particularly strong story in the case of WBCT, the Western Basin Container Terminal at the Port of Long Beach. Can you discuss the backstory on this, specifically how WBCT has incorporated propane into its fuel mix?
So, Greg, yeah, Ports America's been doing a great job. They're a big advocate for using propane and propane equipment. And, this story, we worked with them, and they knew it was time to tell the story. They've been using these terminal tractors for over 20 years. So, not new technology. So some of the first generation units were actually designed for Willie and his team over there at WBCT. So, and the cool thing is, when we did the study, some of those units are still up and running, which is kind of unheard of because these terminal tractors, they're run hard. And of course, they've had engine replacements over time, but the hours and the time really starts to show our reliability. And so what really drove them to go to propane is when they were doing their expansion in Long Beach, they needed to show decarbonization. And for the technology that was available at the time for them to renew the release, propane is what really fit their need, because they looked at the diesel displacement and they had to show the reductions. And, propane has a strong market segment in forklifts, right? And why do we drive forklifts that run on propane? Because you can drive inside of a building and people don't get sick. Now we'll talk about the SOx and NOx emissions in a little while, but simple fact is you can drive them indoors and people don't get sick. So why not use propane, displace the diesel, and be able to offset those emissions to help, support the surrounding communities? So now their operations, they have 150 propane terminal tractors on site. 2 years ago, they just added 80 new Moffe tractors, such as you saw at Break Bulk America, and they're powered by the high-efficiency PSI 8.8-liter engine. Really cool. Low NOx, meets our standards. They achieved real SOx, or the sulfur oxide, and NOx, the oxides and nitrogen reduction, if we want to get real technical, but as emission people, but it's usually known as SOx and NOx emissions. And that's the particulate matter that really comes out that causes breathing problems and actually causes pollution. And by reducing those, it really helps improve the air quality for the port workers and their surrounding communities. And what's especially telling the story is from the leadership. When I talk to Willie and I'm like, you're getting your new tractors, and I'm kind of checking out, the Diesel Emission Reduction Act and what grants he's going to use. And Willie and I ride in the pickup truck and I look at him and I'm asking these questions, and he looks at me and he goes, when you're already clean, how can you be cleaner? And I'm like, wow, that is a huge statement that he brought up. So their decision to switch to propane and continue using it's not by subsidies. It's not by grants. They found an ROI that's just driven by performance, reliability, fuel savings. So it gives a clear advantage propane brings to diesel equipment or their alternatives.
No, Jim, that's amazing. And again, you hit on a perfect point with the ROI because, as we talk about new technology all the time through all that we do in our maritime, our offshore energy, our subsea, our ports and logistics touches. But it all comes down to ROI. Let's talk more about the common language shared among everyone watching, listening, and reading this. And that, of course, would be money. Can you discuss specifically how the incorporation of propane has materially impacted WBCT's bottom line?
Yeah, exactly, Greg. I mean, this is the story. I mean, it's really what makes the difference of an alternative fuel. Is there an ROI? So when you put the numbers to the paper, WBCT and Willie and his team have pushed back, and they're saving over $1 million every year just by running propane instead of diesel. So we're talking a huge savings for the ports. But it's only part of it, right? So we're saving money, but they're also seeing significant savings on maintenance. Propane, you don't get all the particulate matter buildup that clogs up the systems of the diesel engines. We don't have all the after treatment. We got longer maintenance cycles, less downtime, low overall service costs. And after treatment systems, they're so simple. It's a single stage catalyst that actually allows us to meet the emissions of Tier 4 final emissions. And it actually exceeds them. That's the cool part. We're better than. We're not just meeting the minimum. So lower emissions than what's required in a clean air district. I mean, how can you go wrong with that while saving, $1 million a year? So lower fuel spend, reduced maintenance costs, cleaner emission profile. That's what makes propane terminal tractors such a strong fit for ports like Long Beach.
Lower maintenance costs is going to be attractive to anyone watching this, so I'm sure that'll flag some attention. So, and again, you hit on the emission reductions, and again, this is something that's been driving us for many years now. But when you look today, decarbonization and the path to zero is really a political punching bag here in the U.S. But as you know very well, it's the regional and the local regulations that really are driving investment and emission reduction goals, particularly where WBCT lives and works, and that, of course, is California. So, can you share the tangible emission reduction targets that they've been able to hit by using propane?
Yeah, I love sharing these stories. We did a study where we ran the Mafi propane terminal tractor with the PSI engine right against its diesel counterpart. And we knew the calculated results. We know the calculations, we know emission calculations. But when we actually did the test and did the study of these, they turned out better than we are. Our partner GTI, who did the study for us, in their report, they actually said propane's 99% cleaner than diesel. Well, where is that at? I mean, we have across all emissions. So let's look at, they had a 99% reduction in NOx emissions. That's what causes our breathing problem. That's really polluting the environment. That's what you see in the air. Particulate matter also is almost zero. It's 0.004 or something like that. We're talking to the thousandths place of particulate matter, not even the hundreds, because they have to meet 0.04. They also had a 14% drop in CO2 and then 51% less total hydrocarbons. So we're comparing this. So this is the tailpipe where we're looking at, and they saw those reductions, and that's per vehicle. So you multiply that by 150, it's a big difference that WBCT is doing out there. And those results are without layering, having complex aftermarket treatment, having DEF systems in there, having regen, and having those times where we can fill a propane. It fills the same time as diesel, gives us the same operating time, but we have all these emission savings. And it's going to translate. It's the big thing. What do we have? We're clean air for the employees working in the yard every day. These are the people that are connected and disconnected and working in there. So we're making it cleaner for them, and then we're making the surrounding communities. It's outside the fence. That's who's really putting this push on the decarbonization, but we still need to make it affordable. So the port, it's a way to meet their mission goals. It's affordable while delivering immediate benefits on the ground is what we can say about that. But it's really making a difference, and the numbers don't lie because they're not calculated numbers. They're true emission of drive time that's really showing the advantage to propane.
Okay, well, again, Jim, again, as you know, these are complex problems, and I'm sure your job is not quote unquote easy, but then none of us do have an easy job, particularly as you're talking about different technology transfers. So, you've already clicked on the economic benefits, the return on investment. You've talked about the emission benefits, which I know in California is a very big thing. One more piece of the puzzle that we have, of course, is the equipment manufacturers, the original equipment manufacturers, the OEMs. Can you discuss OEMs in the round with insights on who has been most progressive in bringing propane into the ports and terminals?
Yeah, Greg. I mean, this is really a cool part about this part of the industry because, a lot of people come to PERC to develop equipment, but our OEMs, they're stepping up right now, and they're not saying, hey, Jim, can you get us some grant or get us some funding to develop this equipment? They're bringing propane-powered equipment to the market right now. So our first partner in it was Mafi. And, they were big. They're using that PSI 8.8 liter engine, which it's a workhorse. It's got the torque. It's got the power. It's performing the same as the diesel. But you see, Mafi, they delivered their first delivery to the States. They put 80 units into WBCT. So WBC didn't mess around. They ordered 80 units. And then on the East Coast, they started with 20 at PNCT over in your backyard. Had a great, Propane Heroes event that was going on there. And then they're growing. They're going to get 19 more Mafi units delivered by the end of this month in October. So you're seeing the growth. We're seeing a lot of equipment placement. Our next partner is Capacity Trucks out of Texas. So they're producing the propane tractor. One of the lucky things is they're using that same PSI engine. So a lot of the data is already available for them. And if a customer's, they can have Mafia or they can have Capacity Trucks. But, Capacity's getting it done. They're delivering 23 units into the port of LA on the other side of Long Beach there. They're dropping them into New Orleans. And then they're actually starting to hit some big distribution centers, which, I want to say those names, but we can't say those names yet. But, some of the larger distribution centers in the United States, they're asking for propane. So hopefully it's from me doing my job, proclaiming what can happen. And then our third OEM that we have going on right now is Tyco Tractors out of Georgia. So they just delivered the 23 units I talked about that Willie Wan was ordering, that he's not even using any grant money for. So there's going to be 23 Tyco units. So now we have 3 major manufacturers. We're working on a 4th right now. But, the biggest part of that story is the customers are asking for it and the OEMs are responding. They're stepping up. They're providing it. And, the ports and distribution centers, they want clean, reliable, and affordability. Well, there it is. It's your propane tractor. So, propane hits that sweet spot. They cut emissions while keeping operations efficiently and cost effective. So it's truly making propane the energy for everyone.
Jim, again, I appreciate your time. And like you said, you have the monetary piece down, the return on investment. You have the environmental piece down. You're obviously, there are different entities getting more and more equipment out into the world, working successfully, and the impact that has. So again, it's a great story. It's a compelling story. And again, we always appreciate your time in talking about this energy transition that is sweeping in many parts of the maritime and port industry.
Always happy to be here. Looking forward to our next meeting, Greg.
Thank you for listening to Maritime Matters. If you would like to be featured on a future Maritime Matters podcast, visit www.marinelink.com or email maritimematters@marinelink.com.